Hi, I'm Ash.
And I'm Chris.
And welcome to the Untold podcast.
Hello everyone and welcome back to the Untold podcast, season 2. It's just me and Chris for this season, but we have a fantastic guest with us today. His name's James Ray. He's an author of Responsibility, the Authentic Man, and also runs the XCC, the Extreme Character Challenge. So without further ado, welcome James, and thank you so much for taking the time to come and tell us about you.
Thanks, Ashley. Thanks, Chris. Thanks for having me.
Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks.
How are we all doing today?
Yep, doing pretty good. Pretty good so far, yep. Just driven a white van around the M25 and had no drama, so pretty good.
That's good.
I'm out the window, one arm out the window.
A little bit. We had Fix FM on, Fix Radio on the tunes, yeah.
Yeah, Fix Radio, and that's for the event tomorrow.
That's right.
At the Island Eye Showground.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
Fix Fest number 1. I'm gutted. I am gutted that I can't be there.
Yeah, we'll miss you.
Today, obviously, given your background, you're the author of the book, The XCC Challenge. I just want to dive into what it really means to be an authentic man. What was the inspiration for the book?
Well, the question of authentic man for me is about, it's hard to say what is a man. You know, people say like man up or be a man. You've got to be a man. The problem I have with that is that you can be a man by genetics. You're born one or the other. That's what I believe. So it's like, that's it. You're a man. And even if you decide to change, you still choose one or the other. It's not like there's this middle space. And so I think the reality with this is if being a man is a birthright or a thing that you just inherit and just step into, then it doesn't mean anything because you didn't choose it and you didn't do anything about it. So that's where this idea of authentic man came up, because I started thinking with my friend Miles there about this idea of what is it actually we're trying to get at. Initially, the working title for the book was Solid Bloke, Becoming a Solid Bloke. And it's that idea, you know, it's like, oh, he's a solid bloke. And if you said to me, if actually you say, oh, Chris, you're going to meet him, he's a solid bloke. Immediately I'm thinking, oh, he's a good guy. Yeah. You say he's a good guy, you're a good guy, he's going to be a good guy. But one of the reasons we have to say good or bad is because there's a whole bunch of toxic out there, especially around masculinity. And so somehow we have to distinguish. But then my thinking was that solid is kind of a good, like solid bloke is good enough, but it does also have this undertones of kind of geezer. Yeah. But also sometimes solid isn't really what you want. Maybe you want solid could be like stuck, like a rock. Oh, yeah. Or solid buff, you know, so he's solid, he won't move. He's solid like a rock that will never change or something like that. Whereas maybe you want, if you like, fluid, someone a bit more adaptable. So if you say adaptable, oh cool, yeah, he's flexible. Oh, nice. So suddenly I was thinking, well, the solid thing doesn't really work. And so we land on authenticity because ultimately I think that word encapsulates what I believe effectively what you see is what you get. That's what I think authentic is in terms of authentic man. And so this concept of authentic man is this idea that hopefully I'm the same to you as I am to anyone. And hopefully as I show up in one room, it's pretty much not identical, because there are some ways that you should change. For example, I used to be a school teacher. And if you're a teacher in front of kids, you know, and you were swearing at the football at the weekend, you don't bring that same kind of bloke to the classroom just because it's inappropriate. They're children. But that doesn't mean you're fake. It just means that you're adapting to your environment. But hopefully you're the same sort of person. So if those kids said, oh, sir, do you like football? Your answer should be yes. It shouldn't be no. What gave you that idea? Because again, you're starting to cover up parts of your life. And what I think about with masculinity especially is often the problem with a lot of men is we end up covering up who we are. And we either do it because we want to be accepted by other men. So there's that kind of bants. I've got to be tough. I've got to be cool. I've got to be funny. All of that stuff. Or we're covering up because we're basically afraid of who we are. We're ashamed of who we are. And so there's that feeling of, I'm actually going to cover up because I don't want you to see the real me. And I think both those scenarios, either you're covering up to try and impress people, be someone you're not, or you're covering up to try and hide who you really are. Both of those things for me have got real problems around masculinity. So the final thing, really, the authentic man, is the book is called Becoming. And there's a sense by which becoming the authentic man is this journey that we're all on to never quite get there. So my thinking is that no one person is the authentic man. There is no sense like that guy. I get asked a lot, like, can you give us a male role model? If it's not these toxic influences online, then who is it? Yeah. My problem with that answer is like, well, if I say someone, the chances are like within a week or a month or a year or 5 years, they're going to do something stupid because they're human. And then the risk is like, you've put them up on a pedestal and suddenly they've fallen off. I'm a bit older than you guys, but David Beckham used to be like the top bloke. And then of course he messed up on the football pitch and he's gone from being like, what a great guy, the hero of our nation, to being a fool. And so the problem I have is if you put any one man in any one space, he's going to make a mistake. So my thinking was, well, actually there's great bits of each of you. Like I've already heard, I know Ashley a little bit better than you, Chris, don't I? But Ashley, already there's so much about you, the way your work ethic, your way you want to try and help people, your mindset which is around kindness, also the way you want this podcast to help people speak more about the reality in their life. All of this, I think, is like the beauty of authenticity. It's real. So you're excellent in those areas. I don't know well enough to know where you're not excellent, but I know there'll be stuff in your life like me where you'll be like, yeah, I'm not very good at this though. But Chris was talking about, well, I can't come to Fix Fest because I've got to do daddy duties. And so clearly you're a focused dad. So like, brilliant. You've got these areas. So what my thinking was, and the thinking in the book is, why don't we start to piece together the best bits of all the men we know? And out of all of those best bits in any area, money, sex, sport, health, fitness, work, whatever it is, fun, seriousness, intellect, whatever you want, you can start to piece together and say, essentially all of that is my idea of brilliant masculinity, but no one man embodies all of it. And that's kind of why it's nice to have each other. We've got each other in our lives to say, well, actually, I really admire this guy for this, but he's not brilliant at everything. And so, I think that's the kind of approach. And I feel like for me, it's the hope for our young men. It's like, you don't have to be like any one man, but you can be like many men.
Yeah. So what would you say then is the top 5 ingredients? If we're looking at, if you was to make the most authentic man, what would be the top 5 ingredients that you put in that mix?
Okay, well, I've got 4 off the top of my head and I'll think of the 5th while I'm talking. The 4 off the top of my head, I always say these same 4 things when I think you meet, if you want to meet or be a bloke who's really authentic or solid. First one, I think you need to be able to admit when you're wrong. And that can sound really negative. Like, why would you start with that? Like, of all things. But I think one of the main problems for all humans, but especially for men, is to be able to say, I'm wrong. I made a mistake there. That wasn't brilliant. Because if you can admit when you're wrong, you're also saying I'm not perfect. And so then you're kind of adapting. So first, admit when you're wrong. Second one is they're kind of linked. They go in a process. Admit when you're wrong. Say sorry. That's about accepting that you've made a mistake and then owning your mistake. Because it's all right to say, yeah, I was wrong there. I was playing a game with someone recently and he said, I'm going to have to take a bit of a hit here on these cards because he played a couple of bad cards. And instead of saying, I made a mistake, sorry, or yeah, that's me, he sort of made it out like, well, I'm just going to have to take a hit. And I was like, yeah, so basically you're saying you're wrong. And are you sorry? Do you care? And so saying sorry says, I accept it's me and I don't want to do that again. So admit when you're wrong, say sorry. And then the third one, again, a real sticking point for men is to ask for help. So admit when you're wrong, say sorry, ask for help. Because it's crucial that we don't just sit in that place of, okay, I'm wrong and I'm sorry, but I'll do better. And then the question, of course, is like, how are you going to do better? If that's what you did yesterday, how are you going to be better tomorrow? And unless you say, I'm going to find help, I'm going to find other people or other wisdom that's better than this or other skills, I don't believe people are going to, it's like, you're not going to change. It'll be exactly the same tomorrow. There's that saying, isn't it? If you do what you've always done, you'll get what you've always got. It's like, if you'll be the same. So admit when you're wrong, say sorry, ask for help. And then the 4th thing is know your purpose. And in a way that is like know your place, know your mission, know your calling, know your challenge in your life, know what your commitments. So it kind of like, feels like know your place, know what it is you're on this earth to do. And I think that really is a much more positive one than the first 3 in the sense of like, it's like saying, if you know why you're here, you can stay in your lane, you can cheer other people on, you can really look at life with a different focus than if you're constantly worried, like, what am I doing? Why am I here? What's my role? And that insecurity around that makes men often quite threatening. And then the 4th thing I would say, just to add on, is something around men being adventurous or taking risks. And I think that's a really big thing for men, is actually like live your life, take a bit of adventure, get out of your comfort zone. Don't try and create the easiest life for yourself. Try and create a life that's exciting and adventurous.
Fulfilling.
Yeah, and I think that's where fulfillment comes from, those things. So I would say, yeah, 5 top tips for men: being an authentic man, admit when you're wrong, say sorry, ask for help, know your purpose, know your place, and also go on adventure. Don't get comfortable, don't get settled.
I kind of feel like they come under an umbrella of responsibility. Take responsibility for your own actions, yourself, everything you do in life, really. Like, I know I said a minute ago, I was really looking forward to this. Everything that you've said is a journey, isn't it, basically? And I was saying to you a couple of months ago, when my son was born 3 years ago, like that, I completely changed. I become that responsible person, and my thought process completely changed. And everything that you've said there, I just basically saw myself growing as you were saying. So it is really, really true what you've said there. I've really resonate with a lot of that.
And I think, thank you for that. And I think the reality of that word responsible is, it's like responsibility is different from being responsible. Because being responsible is like a temporary position. Okay, I'll be responsible for 10 minutes if I have to. But actually taking responsibility is saying, this is on me and I will do something about it. And often as men, we're quite good at saying, like, you go for it, mate, but I'll basically watch. And if you mess up, I'll be the first to be like, look at you. Yeah. You thought you could do this. Who do you think you are? And so men have this thing where we can sort of cheer each other on, but we're basically waiting to chop each other down. Whereas actually taking responsibility for me looks a bit like me saying to you, I'm cheering you on. And also, by the way, you can have some money, you can have my time, you'll always have my kind words or my support, and I won't undercut you. I'm not looking to chop you down. And I think that's the role ultimately of the father when you talk about that transition. Suddenly you realise, like, I've got to be responsible here. I've done something, and here's the outcome. The outcome's a kid. Now it's my responsibility to do something. But being a responsible dad for 10 minutes at the weekend, that's not going to cut it, because the kid will see through that in seconds. And also it's basically fake. So that's where the whole life has to change and say, I've actually got to shift my position here. You've probably heard about Peter Pan syndrome as well. Jordan Peterson talks about that. Peter Pan, obviously, remember from the story, he's trapped in Never Never Land, the boy that never grows up. And I think a lot of men are trapped in Peter Pan syndrome. They're these guys that basically want to stay mucking about, doing the stuff they did as a kid for the rest of their lives. And by the way, I've got no problem with mucking about. I'm quite up for fun. But I also have to accept that I am moving older. Like you said, this journey of my life, every day I'm older. And as soon as I get married, or as soon as I take a job, or as soon as I have kids, or as soon as I get a house, suddenly I commit to things that require some attention. And it's I think it's kind of like this Peter Pan syndrome, when people are just like, yeah, whatever. I've got with my missus, we've got a kid now, but I'm not sure if I'm going to marry her. All this sort of stuff is like, you're already well into commitment and responsibility, but you're sort of backing out of it as quickly as possible to go and play with your mates down the pub. And as Peterson talks about Peter Pan, of course, he's king of the Lost Boys. You know, it's like, well, who wants to be king of the Lost Boys? Why would you want that? And then he's got this kind of Tinkerbell, the fantasy girl, which is basically porn as well, this fantasy of like this life. But the reality for Peter Pan is Wendy is his potential bride or his potential soulmate. But Pan wants to run away from that. And he's constantly laughing at Hook, who's got the ticking clock of time chasing him, and all this stuff. And actually, I think for a lot of men in their 20s, 30s, 40s and 50s, they get trapped as Peter Pan. And if you want to know if it's you, if you're down the local boozer on a Sunday night at closing time, knocking back your 6th or 8th pint because you don't want to go home, or it could be Friday night or Saturday night. But if you're that guy every night of the week doing the same thing, you're probably stuck in Pan syndrome. You need to get out of it. And I would say, take responsibility, grow up.
It's funny you say that, because in the local town where I live, you drive past the same pub that you used to drink in 25 years ago, and there's still people that are my age that are still there on a Saturday and Sunday afternoon. And you just think to yourself, when are you going to grow up?
Yeah.
I suppose those people probably never will.
Yeah, and of course, in some ways, like, you know, maybe that is their life. Maybe that is what they do. My concern would be if they're stuck in those patterns of behaviour that are cyclical, keep going round and round, then what you need to do is change. I said it earlier, if you do what you've always done, you'll get what you've always got. So in order to create a new life for yourself, you've got to change something. And probably it's going to be that kind of habit of just sitting, being idle, essentially drinking. And for many people, it's drinking to forget. It's drinking so that you can pass out and go to sleep.
Escapism.
It's drinking to escape from the reality of your life. And if your reality of life, some people have some terrible lives, obviously. And I have a lot of empathy for that. Obviously, part of the reason I run a charity is to try and help people. But the reality is that you are the captain of your own ship. You've got the keys to your own freedom in your pocket. So if you don't change something, if you don't get away from that cycle, and they say that you're the sum total of the 5 people you hang around with. So if those 5 people have been those people in the pub the whole time, then you're going to end up exactly like the people you're sitting with. And if you're fine with that, maybe that's okay. I'm not necessarily knocking it. It's just that for the majority of people, they can look around and think, nah, these aren't the 5 best people in my life. They're not the 5 people that I was hoping to be like. So you're going to have to shift the environment.
Yeah, and I think before we move on from that, we've mentioned journey. Now, this is something that I've learned massively. You watch these influencers, you watch these people. If you're not getting up at 5 a.m. and doing ice baths, if you're not calorie counting, if you're not macro counting, if you're not doing this and going to the gym and this, and it's really, really, you take in so much and you watch these people. Now, what I've realised is every day is a journey. And originally when I was going to do a podcast on my own, it was going to be called Front Foot Forward. And over the last 2 years, I want to focus on what can I do tomorrow or what can I do today to make tomorrow better. And I think we're talking about these people in the pub and they're still there and they're in this circle of stuff. And they look and they think, right, oh my God, there's so much to change. They're straight back in the pub. Whereas if you break that down, right, next week, I'm going to walk the dog 3 days a week. I'm going to go to a gym. I might do a yoga. I'm going to not go to the pub on Sunday night. I'm going to try and change these habits slowly, slowly, slowly. It's a lot easier to do.
Just about setting realistic goals, isn't it?
It is.
Setting yourself unachievable ones.
Yeah, and I think also something you said, which is like front foot, this idea that you've got to do something. Passivity, they say, especially, is man's number one sin, if you like, is big mistake, being passive, being inactive. That kind of couch, so the guy sitting on a couch watching the football, telling every player how to play, telling every manager how to organise, telling the wife how to cook the food, telling the kids how to do their stuff, but not doing anything himself. And so my challenge to those guys is always, you're the one that needs to do something. It doesn't really matter what it is you do. But one of the things actually you just said, I think is really important, is like, I would say if you want to change your habits, first thing I would recommend is go outside more. Just whether it be a walk, dog walk, stand outside. Apparently looking at trees is good for you. Really? But just go outside. Because the risk we have inside is we become different animals and beasts to who we really are. We become kind of like trapped by the confines of our circumstance or our situation, which is why, of course, prison is such a painful experience for many people, because it's locked inside, away from the natural beauty. And I think outside, the great thing about outside is that so much can happen to you that you can't control. And suddenly it puts you back in your place. It can just start raining, or it can be super windy or cold or beautiful. Suddenly you get surprised by something, or a little bird will fly past, or a leaf will flap down near your feet, whatever it might be. And you're like, this is actually an amazing experience. But I would say to most people, like, if you want to change something, take the first step. And if you don't know what to do, just go outside more. Get outside every day for a period of time. Start walking, start thinking. And to your point about getting up at 5 a.m. and do this and do that and do the other thing I would recommend massively is almost the opposite of that. Go and find some stillness. Go and be totally still. And it's hard to still your mind, but the reality around stillness is that you can actually start to think about what's more important, or you can start to accept what's more important. Whereas we're full of noise, like my phone is buzzing all day, people interrupting me with demands and suggestions and sales pitches or whatever it is. And actually what I really need is a bit more peace. So I'd recommend that massively.
Do you remember when I did that? Do you remember? So I basically, I work, my job is TikTok. I do TikTok lives. So I for 3 days a week, get up at 5:30 in the morning, and I start at 6. But I got up at 5 o'clock the first time I done it, and went and sat in my studio, and it was silent, and I burst into tears.
Wow.
First time I've ever cried. Like, I'm not a crier. I'm like, I'm quite a...
You're a solid man.
I am a solid man, but I've become more emotional over the last few years since I've had my son. But I just sat in the studio and I just listened to nothing, and I just burst into tears, because it was the first time that my brain had allowed me to shut down. I didn't have any distractions. I wasn't having to think about my wife. My son was asleep. My brain was fully active on myself, and it just, I don't know, it was a weird sensation. We actually recorded a podcast that day, and I came in and I was like, boy, it's like, today has been a weird day for me. Like, I was crying for like 15 minutes this morning. So it does do something to you. It definitely does do something when you take time in silence, 100%.
What was going on, do you think? What was happening?
Well, a lot's changed for me in the last few years. Like, I've given up my business. I have my son. I had a stroke like 4 years ago. So I've never really processed anything, because I'm one of these people that if I start to feel emotion, right, let's go and do something, like I'll get that. And I've always boxed everything up in my head. So I never have had that silence to myself. The only time that I think for myself is when I'm asleep, and I wake up in the night. So I think because I was fully awake and fully active, my brain didn't know what to do, because there was nowhere for it to go other than the 4 walls. And it's a proper studio. It's fully soundproof, so there is no noise in there whatsoever unless something is turned on. So yeah, it was a really, really strange experience for me. Really strange. I didn't like it, I'm not going to lie. But then the more I think about it, it was actually I'm not a spiritual person, but it kind of maybe a bit awakening, like makes you realise actually you do need to take a bit of time to yourself.
Yeah, I see that. And also that's part of the reason I should probably explain to any listeners that one of the reasons I've written a book for men, I work solely with men, is because I think actually for many guys, and women are fantastic. I mean, most of the time I spend my time trying to catch up and be as good as all the women I know in my life. And I think that's for many men is true. But the reality for a lot of guys, we don't stop, and we do carry that sense of responsibility and burden, and maybe, it's my job and my thing and I better do this and I've got to do that. And so suddenly to have some stillness, which is why we take men away in the wilderness through the extreme character challenge. The reason we do that is to try and help guys just have that space where, much as we want to think we're one thing or the other, spiritually, mentally, morally, I think a lot of people as well have this sense in their life, there's things they want to fix, but just never time enough to really think about it. Health is the obvious one. Most people I meet have some kind of health ambition that they're not achieving, but they just don't have the time to really say, stop, I need to change. And obviously then often things like some heart failure or something happens, and then people are like, right, now I have to. And I think it's a shame if we have to get arrested in that way, like really hit before we change. But I think ultimately that's as humans how we react. We react to those shocks.
That's true for a lot of people though. You have to get to rock bottom. You have to have something. Like this is quite a good story. My dad he's a big bloke. He's just had a hip hop. He's just had a knee op. He was waiting for these for 4 years. He was too big. They wouldn't do the operations because of his BMI. For years, he was trying, he was doing bits and pieces, he was eating better, he was that, but he just couldn't do the exercise, he couldn't. We went away skiing one year, took my 2 kids, my wife, my 3 kids, my stepson, my wife, my brother, my brother's fiance, who's married tomorrow, and we had a chalet at the top of the mountain. It was a good 30-minute walk to get from the top of the mountain to the bottom where the pubs and the bars are and the sledging was, and he could only do that walk once a day. And we went on that trip and he was mortified. He couldn't watch his grandchildren go sledging. He couldn't possibly put on a ski boot. He was really struggling. He came back from that holiday and I think he lost 7 or 8 stone in that year, and then had the op, then had the hip hop and the knee op.
Brilliant.
And that was something, not that it was something triggered in him. Yeah. And he was like, I can't live like this anymore.
Yeah.
And he said after losing all that weight, he felt like a new man.
Yeah.
Because he wasn't carrying it around with him.
Yeah, and also, I mean, there's a chapter in the book called Fun and Healthy. So all the chapters are like dualisms, 2 things that you think that might not be together. These 2 obviously are. But Fun and Healthy, there's a bit where we tell a story of a guy in a supermarket can't catch his own kids. And obviously there's those moments in life when you realise, I'm not fit for purpose. I'm not fit for life. And actually, I think it's a beautiful realisation because it can kick you into doing something different. And again, for any of your listeners that are sort of similar age, anyone under 50, basically, I heard Bear Grylls was being interviewed the other day, and he said he thinks he's going to live to 150, it may be 200. And the interviewer laughed at him and was like, ha! And then he was like, are you serious? And Bear's like, yeah, I'm deadly serious. I'm 50 now, but I will definitely live to 100, or expect to live to 100. And by the time I would live to 150 more years with AI, do you not reckon they'll have worked out a way of keeping me, someone like moderately fit and active and healthy, someone like me alive for another 50 years? So the interviewer, you can see him like, well, actually, yeah, probably a good point. And so he's like, by the time we then get to that 150, do you not think they've worked out another way of making me more like robotic or whatever? And I think I sort of smiled initially because I know Bear a tiny bit, and I was thinking that's typical of him to be like fully focused and all in, and he's got 150 more years of his life planned out. But so I was smiling thinking, wow, I don't know, I'd probably prefer to die at 100. But then I also thought that's a genius way to think. It's actually super helpful for me now, I'm 45, to start thinking, there's no way I can start imagining my body can decline in 10 or 20 years. I've got to keep it going. I've got to keep some sense of health and well-being. Got to be careful how much I eat. Just because the service station I just stopped at is full of Monster Munch and Yorkie bars, it doesn't mean I can just chow them down. And I think that's, again, this sense of responsibility for ourselves and realizing, like your dad did, Ashley, that he said, if I want to hang out with my grandkids and have any kind of life with them or memories with them, I need to be present. I need to change. And I think it's, again, a beautiful thing for us, many men, that most men that I meet, majority have got some weight to lose. I'm the same as well, but it's just a fact. In the UK, if you look around, most men are overweight. It's very rare you meet guys sort of underweight. And I think that's just a challenge for us, just like eat less, move more.
It's the last thing on your priority list, isn't it?
Yeah, and also we comfort eat, and then the beer doesn't help, and then you haven't got time because you're too busy doing this. And I get it. But of course, our bodies were designed for so much more. We're so active. Apparently, most adult humans, I don't know if it's men and women or both, or whatever. Apparently, most people don't sprint ever after the age of 20. And most people only jump, like properly jump in the air, once or twice a year. That shocked me.
Yeah, you think about the last time you jumped.
Yeah. When do you, I mean, like maybe to reach something, but that will be it. And then once, and then in 6 more months, I have to reach something else and jump again. So I read that, I was like, right, I'm going to start jumping more. Surely I've got to be able to jump, you know? And then sprint, okay, I get it. And I also have to be a bit careful with hamstrings or whatever. But then I was thinking, definitely if I go for a run at the end, I want to try and run fast. I want to try and sprint a bit. Because why would I leave that for my 20s? Surely I should be able to sprint a bit.
It's quite interesting because obviously I'm coming on the XCC challenge in like, what is it, 5 weeks now?
It's coming up.
So I went to a boxing class before I went to Spain and they were like, right, you got to skip. I'm like, skip? And I thought, I can skip. God, it took me so long. And that was jumping. And when you, like, it jarred through my whole body. My whole body was like, whoa. And you get the realisation that these things that we should do, and you watch these people doing on Instagram, these really trim, it's calisthenics, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right.
And they're hanging off poles and they're doing these things, and I'm like, I would love to be able to do that. But the work and again, you watch it, that guy's doing it, I'll never be able to do that. Well, actually, if you broke it down day by day, in 6 months' time, you might be able to do a handstand on one arm.
Yeah, I bought a DVD probably 10 years ago. I can't remember what it was called, but it was, everybody was buying it. It was like a big set. You get six DVDs in there. It was all calisthenics and stuff. And me and my mate, we put dust sheets across my wife's parents' garages because they had a triple bay garage. We went in there and started doing these DVDs. I took a little telly in there. We did it once. We were like, we're not doing that again. It started to hard work, and that was it. But it's a weird thing, isn't it? Like, you do kind of, once you get to a certain age, you just think, right, to work out, you just go up the gym. And you lift a few weights or you run on the treadmill, like that's. You do
in some ways, the risk of that is, again, I'm not necessarily advocating that everyone needs to be totally ripped. In fact, again, we talk about it in the book. Almost all the guys I've met who are totally ripped, they're basically the only people that ever notice that about them are other men. You know, generally, if you're heterosexual, you fancy women, they don't really care what you look like; they care who you are, and I think that's a really important thing. So I'm not a massive advocate, and again, I do talk about this in the book in terms of fit for purpose is my motto. So I want to be able to sprint just in case a kid is running towards a road and I want to be able to catch him in 5 steps. That's why I want to sprint. I mean, it sounds like a bit heroic. Or I want to be able to sprint to the bar before last orders or whatever.
In case you need it.
Yeah, but what I don't want is to be able not able to do that. Just like, no, I can't do that. Like a pull-up or something. No, can't. Why? Too heavy. And so instead of, for me, it's not about me saying, okay, I'm going to swing around a pole like a fireman. I'm going to do it just in case I need to do 1 or 2. And I want to just be able to, rather than maintain, like that idea of just go to the gym to try and maintain something which is basically degrading. I want to always be thinking, well, what could I get sharper at or a bit stronger at? And I think that's something as well around our culture, the passive side of us men. The risk is we'll lean back and be like, yeah, whatever. Those days are gone. Instead of thinking, yeah, I could do a bit more. I could actually just press into that. So yeah, I think it's worth reflecting on.
Yeah, and I think exercise is very good for the soul. Even we had the 4 dogs, as I said to you earlier, and I was coming home every day and walking these 4 dogs. And during that time, I was sort of doing a bit of a water fast. I was still eating dinner, but during the day I wasn't. I was literally just drinking water, and I lost like 5 kilograms in a week. I didn't go to the gym. I just got some exercise in. I just walked the dogs for an hour every day and didn't eat stuff. And I always find that when I'm in a dark place, binge eating, doing nothing, and I'm like stuck in that. And then once you get out of that and you push forward, and you're like, actually, no, this is my body. I've got to look after it. I need to do the steps. I need to do this because otherwise I'm just going to keep going backwards, downhill.
Yeah, and I think you're right to connect the two. There's a saying which is we don't have a body, we are a body. And so our body and our mind are so closely connected. We call our extreme character challenges the wilderness stuff for men. We call them mind, body, soul adventures. And the point I believe is that all those 3 are connected. So when you sit in a chair in silence, you burst into tears and then you feel something. This is mind, body, soul. And I think the reality about what you're doing is when you move your body, you can also move your mind. They say also for men that men talk best side by side. So one of the reasons I take hundreds of men, thousands a year on side-by-side adventures is to allow guys to talk without staring at each other. Because there is that awkwardness. If we meet for a coffee or a beer and I want to tell you something that I'm not that proud of, it's like an odd environment to stare at another bloke and then sort of tell him your deepest secret. Whereas actually if you go for a walk, or which is why things like golf help people or whatever it is, just go walk side by side, but you're also moving physically. So your mind is somehow subliminally telling yourself, we're moving. We're not where we were 2 steps ago. And of course, then nature kicks in. And I think there's something beautiful around, I've said already about being outside, but I think also that sense of creation, the created or the natural being unspoiled. And it's not got this kind of like heaviness that our man-made environments have. There's more of that freedom. The sky is big. The weather does what it does. The ground is soft or whatever it is, or it's annoying. And you're not in charge. There's no way you can control it. And all of those things together have an effect on us, mind, body, soul. Yeah. So I think I totally agree. One of the best therapies for a lot of people is sleep and exercise outside, not just pumping in a kind of down basement gym sort of thing.
Yeah. So how do you deal with a bad day?
Good question. For me, often as the body and the stress are connected. So I can feel stress in my body often. And for me, difficult days I'm quite a positive person, so I don't have many difficult days, but partly that's a mindset of realizing what's difficult or what's my perception of difficult. And I think often I try to remove myself from the center of the story. So let's say I get a speeding ticket and then I get to where I was going and then can't park anywhere. Then I get to the meeting and nothing happens that I was hoping for. Then I leave that meeting and can't miss lunch, go to another one, I'm late. And I don't know, again, that's another bad meeting, get home and kids have had a terrible day and wife's going out with her mates and doesn't want to speak to me and there's nothing on TV. You know, that's kind of like, whoa, starting to really feel. One way of looking at that is, as I've just told you, I can look and think, well, I've had a terrible day. Another way to look is think, well, I drive quite fast. And if you drive over the speed limit, you're basically exposing yourself to the traps. So you got trapped. But it wasn't personal. No police officer or no cameras waiting for James. Yeah. So I kind of think like that. It's like, well, then, so you did what you did and you got what you got. And then, of course, you go to the meeting late and you're stressed, but why should all these people do what you want? And so for me, a lot of that stress in my mind is about just liberating myself from the center of the narrative. I think my kids call it like when you're like central character in a game. It's like central character mindset. This whole game revolves around me. And I think the world these days tries to tell us this a lot. Our whole social media, but also our shopping, it's all so self-oriented. It's geared entirely. My social media does not care about my marriage, doesn't care about me as a father, it cares about me as a consumer. And so it drives me to places, again, let's talk about porn. You know, I'm married, so I believe I shouldn't really be looking at other girls naked. And so, but my phone doesn't care. My phone will definitely want me to look at other girls naked. The longer I linger on those pictures, the more of those it's going to show me. So one way for sort of de-stressing or how to deal with stress, start saying, I need to take control over the impulses that are coming in and actually say, enough. And then a final thing I'd say, which you haven't really touched on, is the spiritual side. But I believe that prayer helps. I think that actually saying a prayer or giving it up, letting it go and asking for help, for me, that prayer enables so much more of a liberation of me that you can find yourself de-stressing, just breathing and almost allowing a prayer to be a breath. I talked earlier a little bit about being silent. You could say meditation. I don't use that word very often, but in this context, it could be like just being meditative and thinking, well, whatever's happened today will be, but tomorrow will be another new day, new opportunity. So I think there's a lot around all of that. And other times life's just hard. It's just crap, isn't it? Yeah. I've got a friend, he says that life is like train tracks and the train tracks are battles and blessings and battles and blessings and battles and blessings and battles. And they run side by side. And you kind of think, yeah, you know, the day that your dog dies could be the day you win some new business in your company. And life doesn't care. Life doesn't say, well, I'll do dog dying on Tuesday and win new business on Wednesday and I'll help you out. It's like those two things can happen at the same time. Yeah. So I think as humans, we just have to learn to adapt, but also be expectant that it's not all going to go well as I want it to.
If you like what you're listening to today, guys, please do like, subscribe and share the life out of this podcast so we can get it out to as many people as possible.
And for season 2, we want you to be involved. So we have the Untold phone. Please send us funny jokes, dilemmas, anything you want to 07511 272 459. And who knows, maybe we'll feature you in the next show.